Welcome to the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. I'm Greg Schenkel, President of Unique Training and Development and Frontline Leadership Systems. And today's episode, we're featuring something new that we're offering in the marketplace. It's our Plant Manager Effectiveness Program. And if you run a large enough company, you can run that program internally for your plant managers, or if you want to, you can join in with our public version of the Plant Manager Excellence Program starting in April of 2026. And today I'm quite excited to welcome our guest, who I've known since around 2010-ish, somewhere in there. It's Rick Richkowski, and I want to do him justice, so I am going to read the intro just to make sure I cover all the key info. So today I'm joined by a guest who is leading a major operation as we speak. Rick Richkowski is the Vice President of Operations at a company called Arrow TruLine, and True is T-R-U, line, and he's going to tell us what that means, because unless you're in the business, you probably wouldn't have ever heard of it, where he has spent the last 8 years driving excellence across the organization. Rick brings a unique and powerful perspective to the table. He is a West Point graduate with 12 years of military service, and he's mastered the art of pulling from that experience to lead teams through today's toughest challenges. He's a firm believer in using structured problem solving, business analytics, and timely decision-making to drive operational improvements. I can also say, after visiting his site and sitting in on his meetings, that he doesn't take himself too seriously and keeps things kind of loose with his team, which is awesome. But what I find most impressive about Rick's approach is his focus on sustainability. He doesn't just want a quick win. He is dedicated to developing effective leadership teams, and he has a great one at Arrow TruLine, and integrating Lean Six Sigma tools with core business fundamentals. His goal is to lead synchronized, multidisciplined organizations that achieve success well beyond expectations. Rick, thank you for making time to be with us today.
Well, I appreciate the intro, and it's good to finally have the opportunity to sit down with you, Greg.
Yeah, we've talked for quite some time. So to give people a sense of how Rick and I met, he was at a company called Graphic Packaging, and we've interviewed a couple of people from there, Kirby Griffin and Michael Farrell. And Rick was a plant manager there. Rick, you were actually instrumental in us winning that project because you were on the selection team way back in 2010. And then we've just maintained our relationship as Rick went through some of his leadership journey away from Graphic, back to Graphic, into consulting for a while, and now at Arrow TruLine for a number of years. And Arrow TruLine was just acquired by the Chamberlain Group, which people, again, might not know what the Chamberlain Group is, but if you have a garage door opener, it's probably a Chamberlain Group product. Or LiftMaster, which is one of their brands. So, Rick, can you just tell people what Arrow TruLine does? Because it's one of those hidden businesses that nobody would ever even think about, but you're a fairly sizable player in the industry.
Right. Arrow TruLine is a manufacturer of garage door hardware. You won't see Arrow TruLine packaging in Home Depot or Lowe's, but our hardware products are sold as part of garage doors through those types of stores, as well as you can also buy our product through the large garage door OEMs like Clopay, CHI, Hostor, and so on. If you want to know whether or not if you have our hardware on your garage door, go to the hinges on the back of your garage door. If you see an ATL stamp, then your garage door is in great shape. Otherwise, you may want to look into it.
Yeah, I wish I knew this before we had our new doors put in, but I think we definitely have some of your hardware in there. The one thing people probably wouldn't realize is if you have a chance after you listen to the podcast, go look at the back of your garage door, and almost everybody has an opener. I remember, and I think you and I talked about this way back in the day, having an electric garage door opener was like a luxury item. It was like what the rich people had, and now it's hard to find anybody who doesn't have an electric garage door opener on their garage. So anyway, once you look at the back of the garage door, you see all the hinges, you see the tracks, you see the rails. Basically, everything there is stamped and assembled by Arrow TruLine in their customers, for their customers. So they're a behind-the-scenes supplier. Rick, what's the scope of your responsibility as the VP of Operations? What do you oversee?
So as VP of Operations at Arrow, I'm responsible for our two manufacturing facilities in Northwest Ohio. We have distribution centers in Dallas, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, and in the Twin Cities area. Also have engineering, and of course safety, quality, and purchasing.
Yeah. So I had the chance to go down to Ohio and see the facilities. Your team was very hospitable. It's a nicely run operation, lots of cool stuff going on for continuous improvement and looking at ways of looking after customers even better. Very customer focused business, having sat through how your team responds to that. And one of the key competitive aspects for Arrow TruLine is having materials in stock when their dealers need them. So anyway, very impressive. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about your leadership journey. And in your intro, I talked about you being a West Point graduate, and you and I have talked about your experience even in the military in getting training there. I'm just wondering
Mm-hmm.
if you wouldn't mind sharing some of your experiences in your leadership journey, some of the highlights.
Yeah, Greg. So, it started when I was young. I was a pretty avid reader back then. There wasn't a lot of online stuff back when we were younger.
True.
And so read a lot of history, read a lot about sports leaders and historical leaders, and was fortunate to have a great football coach who was also the AP history teacher, which helped contribute to my decision to go to West Point.
Wow.
And obviously, there you were just surrounded by this leadership culture and history around military and leadership that you're pretty well immersed in, both from a historical standpoint, but also, uh, well, somewhat from an in your face
Yeah.
standpoint there during your 4 years, where from day one you were faced with leadership challenges and decisions that you have to make under pressure and in a short amount of time, and
Yeah.
and so that led to graduating and becoming an armor and cavalry officer in the early '90s,
Yeah.
and had an opportunity to have a tank platoon of 4 tanks, all the way up to a cavalry troop of 9 tanks, 13 Bradleys, altogether about 30 vehicles and
Wow.
180 soldiers. And that happened to be 5 miles from the DMZ in North Korea back in the late '90s, when,
Wow.
like today, there were some tensions, and so there was definitely some pressure to have your soldiers and have your vehicles ready at a moment's notice.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that struck me is, and you even mentioned your military, officers training way back, even when we were first doing that big contract at the packaging company. But you and I, since then, you talked about how they designed the training. Like the one thing that's very impressive about I think every military operation is how much emphasis they put on training and readiness. And can you speak a little bit about how they would give you like real life situations that you had to work through? I think you mentioned that was some of the training available in California.
Right. So, back in the '90s, there was a lot of focus on national training center rotations for the large maneuver units that had tanks and Bradleys.
Yeah.
And so I had an opportunity to go through a couple different rotations, and your unit would go through on-site training. For me, it was at Fort Carson, Colorado. Then we would do the next level training at a base called Pinyon Canyon in southeast Arizona
Yeah.
before we would deploy to the National Training Center. The
Yeah.
Army would treat that uh, as if you were going to war from the moment you left your home site until you return. But one of the key things is every unit from a platoon of 4 tanks up to the company level, all the way up to the brigade level, led by a colonel, would have observer controllers that knew what was going on, basically had the big brother knowledge of what was going on with the fight,
Yeah.
and was making observations on what each leader was doing, at critical points in the mission.
Yeah.
And it was intense,
Yeah.
and there was no place to hide. And there was no questioning what decisions that were made, whether they were good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, what struck me, and I know you and I have been sharing this when we've been together, and we talk on the phone from time to time, is that what's really awesome about that is it is a training simulation, but with very detailed debriefing. So it's not sort of it's not a check the box type exercise. I mean, it's meant to mimic what a real situation is, and you get very specific feedback on what you did well and some of the things that you would need to be aware of. So I think I mean, very few companies will ever dedicate the kind of resources that it took, you can imagine, to run that operation. But it does show you what's possible, and we've had clients where they want to run a simulation so that they can teach people essentially the key components of running the business and give them some real feedback instead of just like, okay, you did well, go on your way. So I just think that that's been very informative, and it's good for people to know that about you, seeing where you're at right now. I'm wondering, for you, most people, especially if you come out of West Point, I mean, you must have felt pretty special because that is one of the renowned schools. I just wondered, a lot of people say you fake it till you make it, or people have imposter syndrome to begin with in their career. When did things click for you that you actually knew that you were onto something or that you were doing well? Was there something that stands out for you?
Actually, it was the first gunnery exercise as a brand new second lieutenant. And back then, tank units went through gunnery twice a year, and it was on 1,000-point scale, 10 different engagements, split between day and night, and you had to score a minimum of 700 and pass 7 of those 10 engagements.
Wow.
And as we were going through the early stages of it, there's actually a 5-step process. So there are 4 pre-qualifying runs before you get to the actual qualification day.
Yeah.
And during the second and third phases of that, Greg, my tank crew and I were not performing real well.
Oh.
To the point that that my platoon sergeant, who I have the utmost respect for today, and was fortunate to have breakfast with him a few years ago in Colorado, he did outrank me. But after that third run, he called my gunner and me over to his tank, where he proceeded to chew us out in some not so friendly, using some not so friendly words or fit for this podcast, explaining what he thought of our performance. But we went from there and actually ended up with a distinguished run, which was the highest rating.
Wow.
By the time we got to the qualification, and the tank platoon itself ended up scoring the highest in the division for that year.
Awesome.
So in a very short period, I went from, did I really make the right career decision, to, hey, with the right team around you and the right experience, and figure out how to pull that together, maybe I can make this work.
Yeah. Well, and what struck me when I visited you at Arrow TruLine is how tenured your team was, which first of all is an accomplishment. A lot of companies actually deal with a lot of turnover in their management ranks and supervisor ranks. You've actually been, I'm going to say, blessed with a team that's been there for a while, which means they get to learn the business, they get to trust one another, they get to trust you. So that. I think we probably don't talk about that it's really tough when everybody's changing all the time. So you have a very stable team. Is there
that churn can cause a lot of issues for all types of organizations, and I think that although it's important to give folks an opportunity for development to move in and out of positions, you have to weigh that with what that experience can bring. And right now, we have folks who have been there for over 30 years, but the core operations team at Arrow is now moving into its 7th year together.
Yeah, you can imagine. So I think everyone can understand that that being 7 years together means you have a shorthand with one another. There's a high degree of trust. Everybody kind of knows what everyone's bringing. It probably contributes to that, like I said, that looseness, but everyone doing their work and doing their business. I thought it was just quite impressive. And it shouldn't be as unique as it is, but it is, because I see in so many organizations they're cycling people through every couple of years, and then there's a new leader involved, and then everyone has to get used to the new leader and what they want to do. And as we've talked about in our course, there's great leaders you've worked for, and there's probably less great leaders, and all that change and fluctuation. It's not to say you need to leave everyone in place for a long time. It just says that having some degree of stability is an asset as well.
Yeah, if I can make one
Yeah,
more point
yeah,
on that,
yeah.
Greg. Yes, we do have a high level of familiarity among the ops team here at
Hmm.
Arrow, and that goes to some of the other functional departments as well. However, that doesn't take away the fact that there are some tough conversations, both between members of the team, and occasionally I have to have
Yeah.
some tough conversations with members of the team, which gets more difficult with familiarity.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting because the longer you're together, the more you trust each other. And you're right. Most of it is goodwill inducing, but sometimes you're cashing in some of those chips by having to have the more difficult conversations. The nice thing is usually the intent behind those discussions, even if they're difficult, is knowing that it's right for the business and it might be right for the person. So you hope that you don't have as much of the sort of ornery grudges that can happen sometimes after those interactions. I mean, you kind of covered it in your success story because you guys had fallen behind early in that activity. Was there another time in your career where you learned a lesson the hard way that came to mind? I was just curious.
Well, coming into Arrow TruLine was one of those lessons. Obviously, when you make a decision to join a new organization, uh, there's generally a level of positive anticipation
Yeah.
and excitement. Um, well, my first couple days at Arrow didn't resonate that way.
Mm,
There were some hard feelings among some internal candidates that were not chosen for the position, and that created an extremely high level of tension
yeah.
that really extended. I, I joined in February. That probably went until August
Oh, wow.
when the CEO was replaced for some other reasons.
Yeah.
But I guess the lesson from that was there was a small group that was causing that tension, and I'd probably even call it hostility,
Yeah.
not just pointed at me, but at some other folks. Uh, However, Arrow TruLine's a really good company,
Yeah.
and there, as you've seen, are a lot of great folks here. We make a good product. It's a profitable company, and uh, it was a hard decision. On day two, I had the phone out, getting ready to call my former boss on whether or not my job was still open.
I was
Um,
about to ask that whether because of that sort of oh my God, what did I get into moment that you definitely well for whatever reason you chose to stay in and work through it. And obviously it got better from there. But yeah, kudos for you for sort of dealing with that. And we often even say at the most junior level when somebody even just joins the company as an operator or as a production employee, when they first join, they kind of have what you said. There's positive anticipation. This is exciting. It's new and different. And how they feel in that first week, because I think almost anybody who's starting a new job is at least thinking in the back of their head, was this a terrible mistake or was this a good idea? And we talk about how it's important to at least acknowledge that people are in that. So the fact that you got kind of thrown into the ditch almost in a way at first, you persevered through it. And but yeah, it's not the ideal way because most people don't have the stamina to deal with that. You probably do get asked for your advice for more junior leaders or people who you're mentoring or working on. What are some of the things you share with people about things to pay attention to, things that maybe you learned along the way that you'd want them to at least think about? Without preaching to them, but what do you like to share with leaders to help them get better?
yeah, well, when it comes to keys to success for junior leaders wanting to continue to advance in their careers, one of the things they have to realize is there's not a single key; it's an entire key ring,
Yeah, that's a good
and
that's a good thing.
and and that key ring goes to a set of locks, except those locks are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so, what might have worked for that junior leader when he or she solved one problem, in trying to use that same approach in another area, or maybe even a similar situation,
Yeah.
may not work the same way each time. And so, you
Yeah.
really have to be fluid in your thinking and problem solving, and situational awareness as to what's going on in the factory or your surroundings and the individuals that you're dealing with. There's a lot of interactive complexity that comes with
Right.
every leadership interaction. And so being open to learning from each situation, and not being afraid to uh, have to deal with some tough situations at times. But
Yeah.
um,
Well, I like.
another,
Yeah, I like. No, I just wanted to say that I like the way that you describe. Actually, it's great. I've never heard the key ring analogy. Like the key, it's really like a key ring of keys, and I'm picturing like the big janitor keys, where that key used to open that door, but it doesn't anymore. So you got to try another one and another one, and then um, I think until you've seen a number of situations, and I take it that situational awareness is really something that you would have even gotten in the military. Like what is your current situation that you're in, because that's going to affect your strategy and your tactics. Um, so a lot of people come, let's say, from a technical side, and they want to maybe bridge out into more of an operations leadership role. And by the way, I think I cut you off there. You might have had another thing that you wanted to say that you share, but I'm wondering how you help somebody that's more task oriented, more technically oriented, sort of go into the realm of interacting with all the different personality types that they might encounter.
yeah, we've all run into those folks, and we can't survive in manufacturing without those technical leaders.
Yeah.
But it's critical when they decide to go into the uh, leadership realm. They've got to step away from their computer sometimes, and they have to go talk to people,
Yeah.
and they have to go see what those technical decisions that they've made, how it impacts folks on the floor. And so my approach in trying to coach folks like that, Greg, is really about that leadership cadence, especially at the junior level. If you're running a shift, that every day you should approach that shift the same way, and you should walk the floor, and you should see how the floor is set up and ready for your shift. But a big part of that is talking to the folks on the floor, um, at the very start of the day, on what's going on, what are they seeing, and having to put all those pieces together, in those non-tangible things, as well as that hard technical data, and just how the machines are working.
Yeah, I mean, we just did a post that Suzanne Jakes, our marketing coordinator, put out, where we were talking about Gemba, which is a very basic, Japanese lean continuous improvement term, but it's basically the place where it's happening. So I'm happy to hear that you encourage some of your support functions to not try to manage by remote control, but to actually go to where it's going and happening. And one of the things that we're encouraging is, a lot of times operations understands Gemba and the philosophy of going out there and seeing, but the support functions need to make sure that they're going out, because otherwise you're seen as being trying to give advice but not walking in their shoes, or not going out and seeing the realities of it. So I think you're right on with that one.
Yeah, Greg, and if I could add
Yeah,
another
yeah,
point to that
please.
one, sorry to keep
Yeah,
interrupting you,
yeah,
but um, and that's key. Even if they are in the technical role, don't hide behind
yeah,
email and
yeah,
Teams meetings. I get very frustrated with my team if they say I sent an email or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Did
Uh,
you walk down the hall and did you talk to them?
right.
And I mean, that's critical in trying to solve problems, and stop some of the finger pointing that we see sometimes.
Oh, for sure. And you know what? I think that if somebody says that their action item was that they sent an email, but they didn't ever follow up or find out whatever was supposed to happen. It's the same when somebody comes to a meeting and say, well, I didn't get the information from so and so, and I go, well, when did you ask for it? Well, like 5 minutes before the meeting. Well, maybe that's a learning thing. Maybe you'll start asking for it a few days ahead. When you think of big change initiatives, because you've been involved in lean, I know for a while you were actually, people should know you were a consultant. You were almost like a plant manager for hire in some cases, helping turn around operations. So you've been well versed in change and leading change initiatives. I'm just wondering, what did you learn about leading change?
Yeah. So first is you have to be very resilient about that change. Since I have been at Arrow, we've had a number of fairly large initiatives around data and through our daily management. But one of the biggest impacts at our Bryan plant was the introduction of automation on our hinge assembly
Oh,
process.
right. Yeah, I
So
remember you've invested a lot in automation over there, which you'd think would be the right thing to do when you're dealing with a lot of small stampings and parts. But yeah, continue on.
yeah, so we can make 1 million of those hinges a week. However, back in the day when we had to do it manually, and for some folks, in our vintage, they might remember the Lucy and Ethel
Yeah,
candy wrapper deal.
right.
That's essentially what we were trying to do, and we couldn't keep up with the demand. And Arrow had tried to go down the automation route a number of times over the
Yeah,
previous 15 years and could not find the solution.
yeah,
We went back to a vendor who had failed or who had no quoted 5 years before, seeing if they wanted to try again. And in those ensuing 5 years, they had another solution that kind of cracked the code for them on that.
yeah.
And then there was the difficulty in just bringing in the equipment, getting it running, and the different level of focus that automated equipment has and the precision it requires versus our older equipment. But it made a drastic difference to our business, to our productivity, and to our on-time delivery.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but probably some of the earlier automation attempts, the folks might have not even embraced it. Like the other thing I noticed, because you still have some labor intensive operations
Mhm.
when I walk through the plant, and so it's hard on the body, right? It's like, and it's repetitive, and so automation. I think some people are afraid of automation until you realize that automation paired up with the right operator can actually make them safer, less prone to injury, and also doing some of the things that are more difficult to do. And it sounds like that was part of integrating the people in with the automation solutions was helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that is right on target.
Um, there's a few things that you and I have shared, and it's a model that we're teaching in more and more of our training, including the new Plant Manager Excellence program, is this idea of combating decision-making waste, which I know you actually worked with Ray Attia, and I've certainly
Mhm.
exchanged some emails with them. And we talk about how really people at the front line should run the business, people in the middle should improve the business, folks at the top should grow the business. And I'm guessing that you've wrestled with this too as a VP. Is like, how much do you have to get involved in making a decision that should have been solved or taken one or two levels closer to the front line? But I just wondered if there's anything you'd share about what you see, why that happens, how to get it from happening as often.
No, that's a great point, and I definitely wrote down some notes in preparing for this, Greg, about that. Going back to my military time, the what we refer to as the Hollywood call sign for any unit is that unit's nickname in a six. So squad leader six would be when the colonel at brigade level, now with today's technology, would actually parachute in electronically and start telling the squad leader at ground level what they should be doing, without actually being there on the ground and seeing
Yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
And we see that throughout all aspects of business as well. And you mentioned Ray, and I was fortunate to spend several years working with his company, Definity Partners, and working with companies on the run, improve, grow concept. Which, as you said, first line leaders, they're doing the orders to cash and running the
Yeah.
business, and then mid level is spending just a small percentage of time on the run and a lot of time on improve, and then executive leaders should be focusing on the grow. The problem all of us have is as we move through our progression, we're most comfortable at what we have done previously. And so those
Yeah.
mid-level leaders, they remember what it was like to run the floor. And so when folks get stressed, sometimes our default is go to where we're most comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really important for leaders uh, to try to fight that.
Yeah.
And I I fight that. There are days when I see some things going on that it would be real easy to jump in,
Yeah.
but instead I will try to, instead go grab one of the plant managers and talk to them about what I'm seeing. But I'll throw out a name that as well, and his view on this. Chris Dover at Graphic,
Yeah.
he said on a number of occasions, I'm thinking about getting involved, and as you know, once I'm involved, I'm involved. And so I joke with my
that was his encouragement. Like, do you really want me to be involved? And
exactly,
let's
and
get it
and
taken
so
care of.
and so when I am sensing that, I will joke with my guys, hey, I feel like I need to be involved. Do you want me involved?
Yeah.
And generally, I don't have to get involved at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah. No, but it's good that I will agree with you that, I run obviously a much smaller operation than you do. And whenever somebody drags a problem in front of me, it's like fresh meat, and I feel almost compelled to give my wisdom to that but like I said earlier with another guest on another episode, I said, I have now where I'm almost blissfully ignorant because I don't actually know what specifically is happening or how it's happening, and the good news is I trust somebody else is taking care of it. So I will say, because I'm sure leaders who are listening to this are like, I still struggle with, I get involved when I shouldn't. And well, join the crowd. We all do that, where we step in and then afterwards we realize we probably shouldn't have stepped in. We weren't really the person who should have taken care of it. And like you pointed out, when you're getting your command coming from off the where the activity is happening, trying to tell you what to do, it's not going to be an optimal solution usually. And I would say, like, whenever a leader does make decisions and they're removed too far, they're going to make a decision because they're good at making decisions, but they don't really know what's going on. And also then that person is going, well, this was Rick's decision or this was Greg's decision.
Mm-hmm.
This really wasn't my decision. And then they don't even own it. And then if it doesn't work, they go, well, Rick, we tried it your way. It didn't work. Like, what else you got? And you keep owning it over and over again. And the last area I wanted to look at, and then we'll see if there's something else to share, is just this idea of silos. And organizations very much do mimic the military operation, right? We divide up into functions and specialties. And I did have one general manager one time, Rick, this is probably 20 years ago, and he goes, I don't mind silos. I need the finance team to work on finance, and I need the procurement to work on procurement. But he says, I don't want them to do it to the detriment of one another's success. And I just wondered what you've noticed as far as silos and functions not always cooperating and collaborating. How do you deal with that?
That frustrates me, Craig. And the term I use is the cross-functional synchronization.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times when folks have to do some individual work in their silos,
Yeah.
but ultimately, for businesses to succeed, you have to have that cross-functional synchronization. And
Yeah.
so, many companies, all companies struggle with it, but you've had a chance to witness our daily cadence
Yeah.
at Arrow, and part of it is through Teams calls.
Yeah.
Some folks are present for one of our large meetings during the day, and other folks are online. But having even short periods of time during the day, during the week, during the month, when you have the critical folks from the different functions talking together, and not afraid, or the environment is safe for them to throw issues on the table to be worked through. That's been my approach to trying to reduce the silos, or at least make sure those silos are talking at the critical points when they need to.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't provide you this feedback because yours. I think I've shared with my audience before that back before there was so much emailing and online meetings, we used to go and make face-to-face sales calls, and then we kind of got away from it, and COVID happened, and we were quite isolated, and really enjoy, of course, the technology and how efficient it is. And then when business kind of softened, I made a commitment to go out and see more clients and go and yours was one of the early visits that I did where and you were so gracious to allow me to sit through your meetings. And I just wanted to share with you, because since then I've gone and done that with other clients, and the cadence of your meetings and the way that they run were one of the best that I saw across different companies, some that are much larger than yours. So I think companies are recognizing the need for these synchronization get-togethers, as you said, daily, sometimes weekly or monthly. You were really doing it well, at least in what I observed, and thank you.
Thank you.
What I've learned is that by having a bit of an inside view of how the company does run, does give us much more practical sense of like in your case, I did that visit and then I said, okay, my recommendations are actually you guys are doing a lot of things right. So maybe, it's really just fine tuning a few things. It just gives you a sense of reality. And I would just encourage anyone it's going back to Gemba. It's our version of Gemba, which is go to where it's happening, see what's actually happening, and make a change. So Rick, we've covered a lot of ground today, but I always like to give you a chance. Was there something else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Well, you've heard me say this before, Greg, and I would encourage leaders at all level. We are going to deal with uncomfortable situations, and instead of trying to shy away from them, look at them as opportunities to apply complex leadership and decision-making skills in fluid, dynamic, and maybe sometimes hostile situations. And we joke about that here at Arrow, but it's
Yeah.
also part of the culture that we know there's going to be some suck, and so let's wade into the suck, and let's try to improve things. So that's what I would challenge leaders to do.
I like that, and I think I mentioned this up front is that Rick was on the selection committee and also you evaluated our pilot, and I just remember all the good feedback there was, made the program much better. So I appreciate our friendship and relationship. I appreciate your taking the time because you were being acquired. You couldn't really be on the podcast, so this has been a long time coming. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast today, Rick.
No, I appreciate it. I know it was a long time coming, but I've enjoyed it, and it's always great to connect with you.
Yeah. And thank you as an audience member. Now, the thing about podcasts is they can be hidden gems. We're not celebrities here, so we have to rely on word of mouth and some of the other tools, which would include, going on and giving a positive rating on whatever platform you use. Or, a lot of podcasts allow you to share it. I know I share episodes with people of other people's podcasts. So if you can subscribe, share it with somebody else. And the other thing I'd say is if you picked up some ideas or you thought something was interesting from our episode and you want to start a conversation, we're easy to talk to, and you can do that through our website at uniquedevelopment.com. For now, I'll just wish you well on your leadership journey.